Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in on to what's happening in real estate this week. I got Conrad Zarini here at Remax, Escarpment and Remax Niagara, Brian Hogben at Mission 35 Mortgages, and myself, Rob Golfi, here with Remax, the Golfi Team. A couple of things we want to talk about that's hitting the news. Well, we know the bank rate, they held again, which they're kind of kind of telling us what they're doing anyway.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? Like there's, and which is good because that's what brought the confidence level back in the marketplace.
Right.
Am I right about that? And they're saying,
100%.
hey,
Absolutely.
and they're saying, hey, you know what? Like we're probably looking at doing maybe a quarter point, half point. Who knows what they're going to do?
Tiff actually said that in June. He actually said the door is open for a quarter point drop in June. Like he's basically predicting what's going to be happening. So
yeah. So now, do you think that is causing the market to be pretty decent, because holding the rate, talking about a potential price drop, interest rate drop, even though people are signing up for whatever the interest rates are now. If they sign 5-year at 4.9%, they can get right now. Brian, what is it?
Yep. If you get an insured deal, 4.99%.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's an insured deal. That's an
That's
insured deal.
5-year fixed. You're locked in for 5 years, 4.99%, right? So there's some rates that are even marginally lower than that as well. So, and I think people are just getting used to it. Like the rates have held steady. Like we've been in this for all of 2024, right?
Yeah.
So people are new to this. And then if I now hear that rates are going to go down a bit, I've got a little bit more certainty that it's a great time to buy. So,
and I think there was that optimism in November for sure, especially the U.S. was talking about 3 cuts. And then I think that, so you got to remember too, people's life cycle of the buy life cycle. So if you're getting optimistic in the news, and we were talking about this earlier, but the news was very optimistic about it. So if you're getting that optimism in November, December, then you start to wake up and you start looking, right? So you got to remember the life cycle. It's not just that they hear the news and the next day they go buy. So that optimism that was in the late fall translated into major sales in January, February. And Mark, Rob, March was a little bit not as, because a lot of uncertainty news came out. So you can see it has its effects. So now March was a little bit down. Now, then there was extreme optimism. Now we saw a 25% increase in appointments last week over the week before. So now you got this exuberance again coming out in showings, and we'll probably see a really great second quarter in sales.
Yeah, I think so. You know what? We did have a good first probably 4 or 5 months in 2023. And so my biggest fear is, can I match last year's first quarter or first 4 months? And I'm like, because I had a pretty decent first 4 months of last year. And if I can manage that, because I know we can beat the second half of the year, because the second half of last year was just terrible. The market was almost dormant to a certain extent. But I'm actually looking for, it's funny. Us being in this business, we kind of look forward to the end of the month to find out our numbers, which is not good because we're going to age fast doing that. But wait till Brian. Wait another 10 years, Brian. You're gonna go. Where did that 10 years go?
Rob, I will tell you the March numbers were flat. Like they were flat, like all trading areas, even Treb, everything. But if you got to take the whole quarter, right? I know. Numbers, that's significant, very significant. March was not the bellwether of the quarter. The quarter was up about, in some areas up 5% in unit sales. I know we were over 10% in unit sales as a company, and thanks to the good people at the Golfi team, right? They helped prop those numbers up. But no, seriously. So it's got to be the whole quarter, because March was not as it was a little bit lackluster, I would say. Yeah. But moving into this April, May, and June will be very interesting times.
Yeah. No kidding. So. News that came out this morning is saying that they're going to allow 30-year amortization on new builds only.
And
what the why just new build? Are they I can't say those 80s words right now because of all the stuff, I think what's the word to say? Mentally challenged?
I think the word that I'm looking at, and I've got my rose-colored glasses on, and Conrad will say something about it, but I do believe it's progress. It's progress at a minimum, because we've seen mortgage rules change for the past 10 years. The other side, at least, I get it. it's still under $1 million. What's a new home construction under $1 million, right? Like,
Yeah,
it's
But why not? Why go across the board? First time buyers. 30.
They're worried. They said no. We don't want to put any fuel on the fire of the because
the resale
is up. They're up like 1.7%, 2% in units. So the thing is, I think we got to have a new award for like this week in real estate, the BS award, because that is BS. Because such BS, it's not even funny. Because the other thing too is new construction, especially condos. Okay, condos you have to have 20% down, unless. Now, all the banks got to say to these condo developers, you know what, we're gonna, a segment only has to have 15% or 10% down. That is chaotic. Brian is right, under $1 million. And the other thing is those micro units are flat. So we're going to put these first-time buyers in micro units under $1 million. And then when they go to sell, there's going to be no appreciation because there's going to be no demand. So that next buyer, it ain't going to be there because they won't have 30 years to amortize it, right? So this is just like a BS, make us look good. We're doing something about housing, but it's completely garbage.
It's bad. And the only reason I said, do you remember the last one? CMHC came up with the co-ownership, and I think they did one deal over 12. They did nothing. At least this one, like when you look at the $800,000 buyer, if they got $100,000 down, it'll get them up to $850,000. Will there be supply for them? It's going to affect a really small. I agree, but I like to see something.
But Brian, then the next buyer that buys that unit, the little micro unit, because they have to move out, they're not going to have the benefit of 30-year AM, right? No. So there won't be a ready market for that little micro unit when they go to sell it. So that means it's going to grow less. The other thing is 30-year AM, they're not going to have any equity when they go to sell it in 3 to 5 years. Like, I don't know if this was the answer. I call BS on this whole thing. It's just something like it's all.
It would have been. I think they would have had more. They would have had more runway if they increased the threshold over $1 million. If you would have been able to do it over $1 million, say 1.2 million, 1.3, because now you'd probably get some single family homes in there as well too, where people could buy with 10%.
So this is based on only under $1 million on a 30-year amortization.
Yeah. And new construction. So it has to be new construction. And what they've defined as new construction, we don't know yet, but probably
so that's good. So that's basically good for everyone outside of Toronto. So forget, because I mean, like,
and Vancouver, forget it.
Yeah,
like quads, like what do you get for under $1 million? And stick, you can get away with 10% down. Some builders will let you for stick, right? So it's gonna be quads, back to backs, that kind of thing.
So we're gonna find out in 6 months. Nobody's really, it hasn't been that good. I think they should just put it across the board. I get it. It'll put fire on into the market. And,
well, the one thing they added too was they did increase the RSP
that was
problem,
cool.
which I thought was good because that was at 35,000. Now it's at 60 Gs. So if you got a couple buying a house, you can take out up to 120 grand between the two. Now that's some serious money now, right? Like your typical down payment's over 100 grand for two people. That was a good move in the right direction.
Oh, that's awesome. So I mean, they're learning. I mean, we got to get some business people in that with the politics and with the government and everything else like that. So Bank of Canada, no, actually not the Bank of Canada, CMHC predicts record. They're going to hit record numbers in 2026 amid unrelenting demand. What's your thoughts? I've been saying I think the market's we're gonna have another boom. I don't know. What do you think, you guys?
I think you're right, Rob. To get to 2021 levels, we'd have to capture, 20 to 23% value today from in the next 18 to 20 months. It's possible, but I think that's a big ticket. That's a lot of.
What do you think? Why they put this press release out?
It's crazy. Well, I think there's been a battle against now they're coming out swinging. CMHC is coming out swinging against the Liberal government. They're telling them this, you get scared. But the other thing is they said, we told you guys about immigration 2 years ago, right? They said that. CMHC came out and said, I said, what? You guys are coming out swinging over here. We told the Liberals that this thing was going to happen with immigration, and they should have pulled it back. So, I just think that CMHC is showing its teeth, and Yeah, and I think they want to build confidence back in the market too, as well. And they might be seeing some defaults that are happening, and they want to keep people hanging on. Say, hey, hang on, you guys that bought in, the peak of 2022. Now that's the real peak. The Q1 of 2022.
That's right.
Those people paid a tremendous amount. So 2021 not so bad.
I was just looking at a property that somebody bought on Bridge Street in Niagara Falls, paid almost $700,000 in the first quarter of 2022, and I'm just going, oh my God, I feel sorry for this guy. This guy like basically just bought at the peak, and he may have to wait close to a decade. Remember in the late 80s, the boom that happened. I mean, I wasn't in real estate then, but I was an investor as a young my early 20s, and people were buying in the North End properties at a high number, and then the 90s kicked in and they weren't even worth that, and it took almost 20 years for them to catch up.
It took a long time.
In the North, we're talking North End of Hamilton, but now it's totally shifted around. Like that market is pretty good because of the influx of people coming from the GTA, that they kind of changed the North End market a bit. And
immigration as well too, right? Like I think there's a multitude of things that make it a little bit different from there.
There was a lot of slum landlords out in the North End, man. They had all these houses they bought for $10,000-$20,000, and they just
remember banks wouldn't even finance that. Remember there was
that's right
back in the day. Remember Brian at Scotia,
North?
I worked at Center Mall back in the day when Center Mall was an actual mall. And the only one was the Hamilton Municipal Credit Union, and they had to finance down there and then I think it was First Ontario ended up acquiring them, so they started to do. It was north of Barton Street was a no-fly zone.
That's right. They didn't want to touch it. No, I remember that when I first got into the business. I remember they didn't want to touch. Banks did not want to touch anything north of Barton. Isn't that crazy?
It's great. But you bring up a great point, and this plays right into what you've been predicting all along, Rob. Like the fact that there's so much, back then the volatility of the North End and that kind of thing. Now all those guidelines are lifted. Nobody has any more. Real estate, bricks and mortar, on the ground, up in the air, whatever is still a solid investment. And I really believe that CMHC is telling people that because the double cohort is going to come in 2026. Right. So you got to remember that there's a lot of that 2021 mortgages that were at 2%. 1.9 and 2% fixed. They're going to be coming up for renewal. And then the guys in 2023, because Brian's team told everybody to get a 3-year mortgage in 2023. So CMHC knows there's 70% of the mortgages in 2026. So they're saying, guys, don't worry. If you bought in if you bought at the peak of 2021, you're going to be not underwater. So don't panic. You know what I mean? So that's probably what they did.
Yeah. Wow.
I'd echo that too, because we're seeing more people now that can't buy. If you bought end of 2021, beginning of 2022, you don't have the refi amount to take money out, and you can't sell to take your equity and buy another place. We just had one yesterday where it's like you're underwater. We had one the other day where someone bought a house, they asked for a price reduction, they were already losing $60,000. So it's like these people are really coming out of the market fast and furious right now.
Wow. Crazy. So, what else is happening out there? We got about a minute and a half left. Anything else happening?
I think it's exciting. I think this was a busy week for news, and I think what's going on with inflation in the U.S. a little bit of a wild card, but I think there's a lot of exuberance. I think people are ready, and I think I think a lot of talk of long-term rates getting to that 4.5, 4.25 maybe. So we're not far off from that day. Right now. So it's a lot of positivity, a lot of good energy in the market right now. Really good. Yeah.
2 seconds. There's another article. We're not going to elaborate into it. Canada needs to build 1.3 million additional homes by 2030 to close the housing gap. But somebody is saying they need more, 3.5 million to actually catch up.
I think it is that way when they start to factor in the the students that are here and all that kind of stuff. I will say this: I was just on a panel the other day, and they said that $20 billion fund to do rental housing for that the federal government's doing. We calculated it's 36,000 houses. 36,000 units. That's it. Drop in the bucket, guys. It's gonna take
you know what?
It's just $1 trillion.
No kidding. So
Wow.
that is going to cause that, like, it's going to be a long time. They're like they're saying it's 3.5 million homes by 2030. Anyway, it's crazy how this is, and we're going to be talking about housing forever. Maybe
Yeah.
Brian might make it where they like, hey, housing's affordable. He might outlive us by 10, 20 years.
I don't think that's going to happen. I'm going to keep buying and buying and buying. Okay?
That's
and
it.
I think everybody else should too. Whenever you get the opportunity, I don't know, like all these indications, great long-term investment. You said it, Conrad. You said it, Rob. Still continues to be.
Guys, thank you. And if you're listening, like, share, and follow if you want to hear more. Thanks, guys, for being here for me today. And we'll see you next week.
Great. Okay.
Thanks.